Yo, what's up? My name's Sephiroth, and in this video I'm going to be talking about sidechained reverb and how I like to control my reverbs. Manual automation of the gain of reverb versus using sidechain, and how to set that up, and how to split reverbs into their own channels so that you have more control and some cool techniques in general about reverbs. So first I'm going to show you just a regular sound with reverb on it. So first let's do like a sub. Let's do like that. And then I'm gonna give this a bit of a wobble just to start off. So I'm just gonna wobble this noise layer and not the actual sub. So it's gonna give the illusion that the sub is wobbling when it's just actually playing a solid note. And then I'm gonna duplicate this, group it, and call this top bass. And then I'm gonna put a Pro Q and just high pass this. And then let's go ahead and mute the noise layer in this top bass. And then I'm gonna get a saturator out and make a bit of a wobble out of this. Since I got rid of this noise layer here, I'm going to use this noise macro to then call it wobble. And we can start to use this instead to wobble the gain of this top bass. Right, so then once we just start to distort this, we're going to see the harmonics come in. And then we could use like maybe a sinoid fold. So let's put reverb on this layer. So I'm gonna get a room, and let's just see first what it sounds like to just put reverb straight on a sound. So that's pretty cool, but what if we want this reverb to get out of the way? Well, there's a few ways we could do it, right? We could automate the mix amount. So we could just take our automation here, put it onto the mix amount, and then I'm gonna hold control and just invert this by dragging down on the skew point. Now I can attenuate this back down. And that's essentially a manual sidechain. But what if we want to change this rhythm? We don't want to have to mess with this automation. So how would we do that? Well, we can make this reverb totally wet like this. And then we can group it, and then make another channel here and call this dry. So this is called making a wet dry rack. And now we can use these two gains to adjust the volume of the dry and the wet signal. So what I can do here is right click and I'll map this to macro 1, and then we can automate this knob, right? So this is kind of a similar thing, but instead of dry wet inside the plugin, we're doing just automating the wet, which means the dry chain stays the same volume. So we can then maybe invert that. And you can hear already that's giving us a much more sidechained effect than when we were automating the wet dry. You can hear it kind of almost creating an echo. It makes it sound like a smaller room. And with this technique, you can then start to actually turn the decay up and get more of a tonal reverb, especially if you turn the size down and the diffusion. And I like using this technique because you can really do a lot of cool things with automation that you can't really do with a sidechain compressor, like this. Right, but what if we want to just have it be sidechained so we don't have to worry about automating it? Well, we still need this rack here, this wet dry reverb rack. So let's get a compressor out. I'll show you first with the Ableton compressor. But I don't typically like to use the Ableton compressor. I like to use different compressors that are a bit cleaner. But you just enable this sidechain here by popping open this little pop-up, and then audio from sustained sub, and then in the second drop-down we can specify where exactly we're taking the audio for the sidechain from. So let's go take it from... Oh, wait, hold on. I have two things called sustained sub. I'm going to rename this top bass. So now I can find it easily. That's one reason why I like to name stuff, is just for these little drop downs. So top bass, and then here we can see wet, dry, reverb rack, pre-effects, wet chain, or dry chain. So let's go for pre-effects on the dry chain. So now this is taking the dry signal and using that to trigger an envelope follower that is inverted, and that's gonna therefore duck the reverb out of the way automatically. And then you can use this chain volume here, call it wet gain, and we can use this to allow as much reverb as we want. So we can still automate this chain volume while at the same time having that dynamic adjustment happening over here. I'm gonna do some pitch modulation on this just so that it's not the same exact note. Let's have it kind of ramp in. And then let's maybe turn automation lock on and then duplicate this. The reason why I turned automation lock on is because I don't want to mess with this automation, but I want to keep that pitch automation that I just did in the envelope section. You can see that does carry along with the clip regardless of this automation lock button up here in the top right. Maybe we can bring both of these notes up. So in Ableton 11 I can select both of these clips and then go Control A, or right click and select all, or box select, and then I can adjust the notes of both at once, which is pretty useful. Right, so that's a pretty nice effect, and I think the combination of those two is really useful. So you can see you can do a lot with this automation. Having parts that are dry and parts that are wet gives the overall sound a feeling like the space that the sound is contained within is morphing from larger to smaller. It also gives a very psychedelic feel because in the dream world, the size of buildings and things can morph, but in the real world, usually reverbs stay consistent. So if you're going for a more realistic reverb sound, this is not the technique. But if you're going for like kind of a psychedelic effect, I think this is very useful. And you can apply this to a lot of stuff. So you can put delays and other time-based effects, anything that creates tails. You can throw this in the wet-dry sidechained rack, and then you can save this. So I'll call this sidechained. I'll usually put my name first, so Sephiros, sidechained, V, Valhalla, room, right? And then I save it to my library, and I like to put all my racks in the blue. So yeah. So this is also a very useful tool for drums. So let's get a drum rhythm out now. I'm just going to put a simple, basic beat. Alright, so I'm going to put this rack on my snare, put the rack on the snare, and then we'll have some sidechain reverb on the rack itself. So I'll put the sidechain reverb up here on my snares channel. I have a group of chains inside this main drums drum rack that contains all my kicks, and then another one that contains all my snares. Because you can take multiple chains when you pop open the chain selector or the chain window. You can take those chains and put them in a group that's essentially bussing those all, so then you can just throw an effect on multiple snares at once so that I can have another snare affected by the same reverb. Right, so one thing we have to do is delete this automation. And let's just give a little bit, like minus 20 dB maybe. And then it's all about adjusting the ratio, threshold, and release to get the amount of pumping you want. The knee will give a more bent curve. So let's go with a smaller reverb. So I'm going to reduce the size here on the late and the early, bring the decay down and the pre-delay maybe down and the depth down a little bit, and then we can turn the whole thing up in a bit now because it's a smaller reverb. Alternatively, we can put this on the whole drum group. And this will bring me to the next thing that's important, which is to sidechain your reverbs. So you want to put, not sidechain, to EQ your reverbs. So notice I put the EQ before the reverb. This is going to allow me to choose how much of that kick's going to come through into the reverb, which is going to cause a lot of extra mud and reflections, so I can reduce that on the way into the reverb first. So I like to listen to the whole mix when I do this and adjust it depending on the mix. So you see we put this on the main drums here, but we could try putting it on the drums group. And the cool thing about this is we can then put it post any sort of bus compression that we want to apply to everything. So maybe we'll get a devil lock. It's like a really hardcore compressor / saturation unit thing that sounds crazy on drums. So I'm going to put this before this utility and then duplicate the utility so I can boost gain into it and then fully mix it. And then let's do parallel on this as well. So now we have a wet dry chain with this devil lock. And to make this apparent, let me get a hat, make a quick hat pattern. Sephiroth's hat from Patreon pack. Just giving the envelope here on the sampler a little bit of automation to give some movement. Gonna high pass some of that bass out of the hat. This is a synth hat, so maybe I'll layer up like a real hat on top of it. Okay, that sounds like a real hat. Gonna mess with the swing here just a little bit, do some retardando, which means it's gonna, these hats are gonna slow down and then maybe accelerando back into the grid. So it's kind of retardandoing over to the snare. So let's retardando, or not retardando, but just offset the snare a little bit late. And then I think if we had a pre-transient, the snare wouldn't sound so late. So let's get a hat and just put that at reversed before each snare, so it kind of like leads into it. Something that can be cool is just a really fast auto pan on these kind of things to kind of chop it up. I'm going to offset these ever so slightly. Okay, that's pretty cool. So, you know, this is like step one, right? But it can be really useful to separate these layers out, so you should know how to do that. So basically, you can just either freeze and flatten it or record it into a new channel. I don't think it's too much. I don't think it's too much CPU right now to just freeze this. So what you want to do is just solo the reverb chain, and then you're going to get only the reverb, and you're going to get it sidechained. So if you don't want it sidechained, you just turn that sidechain off. Let's get it sidechained first, so I'll just freeze it. And then if we select this, we can copy it and paste it onto a new channel. Now let's get it unsidechained too, so I'm going to unfreeze and then turn this compressor off and then freeze it again. And then boom, we have some cool reverbs to play around with. So let's unfreeze it again. So let's maybe leave this rack off now for a sec and just listen to these two. So let's do the sidechained first. See, like, what if this was here and reversed with a little fade on it and turned up a bit? That was so easy and quick to do because it's in audio. So you're starting to see why it's fun to use reverb bounce to audio. It becomes much more flexible. Okay, so that's a little too sudden, so what if I duplicate it and then reverse this one and like crossfade between them? So reverb becomes really cool once you start to pitch it around. So let's take some of this reverb from the unsidechained version because it's much more unadulterated or whatever. Let's get a new channel. Put this on here. Let's reverse it and then pitch it up a bunch. Like that's a cool little glitch noise right there. So you know, you could like take some sidechained reverb and like put it on that now, so you can see what sidechained reverb sounds on like some effects noises. And then maybe we use the chain volume to just mute it right here. Let's take a wub and just wub this. Just make it go along exactly, but like maybe more of a fin kind of wub. Maybe a little bit lazy. So let's get a little lazy fin wub. But sometimes you want just momentary reverb, but you want to keep the reverbs in, say, your effects group. So let's make an effects group, right? And we can put this, well, this is kind of a synth sound, so let's put it in upper tonal. And let's, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, effects. So I can take the audio and I call this audio channel snare, reverb, throw or throwing, because we're gonna throw some reverb into this. So here's how to make a send out of any audio channel. That way you can have the send not be where the sends go. Which, by the way, I'm going to delete these sends. I've been using sends less and less as soon as I started doing this busing type of template with all the groups and groups. I like to have my sends in their respective groups so that I can stem it out easily by just sampling the group. So let's go and take the audio from kick snare and then specify my snares channel, because remember I made a snares group channel inside the drum rack. So that's another good use case for reverb throwing if you have a snares group. So let's go snares, and then let's do pre-effects, or actually let's do post-effects. Post-effects just because I want to get the saturation if I saturate it. If I put effects on there, you know, like I could affect it. So let's, so basically now the audio is going to be coming in if I set this to input monitoring. So you'll see the audio here. I'm going to mute the channel, but you'll see the audio. So if I put a snare or a reverb on this, let's do Valhalla Shimmer. I'm not quite sure why it's so delayed. I think it's because I'm doing delay tricks. So let's see. How do I fix this? Maybe if I do pre-effects. Maybe that's just the way the reverb's behaving. Let me try a different reverb. I'm gonna try a plate. Yeah, that was just an effect of the Valhalla Shimmer. It had some weird attack on it because I made the size small. So you can hear this sounds pretty good. And if you get a utility, I have this preset I made called utility 0 top gain. If you put this utility before the little plate and turn it from 0 dB all the way down to minus infinity, now we're going to get no reverb, right? And the channel's muted. So now we can just let in whatever snare we want and the tail won't overlap. What I mean by that is if we have this automator after the plate, whenever we have these two snares, if we have this send automation come in like this, you'll hear the timbre of both of those snares in there. But what if we just want the one snare? Well, we can put this, and now if we automate this gain up for just this part, we'll just have some nice reverb. And then if we want to duck it out of the way, we can just go like this, or put a sidechain compressor on this channel. And then as long as we turn this gain down, since this gain is before the plate, that tail will ring out. So usually if I do have to, I will sidechain EQ. Why do I keep saying sidechain? I can EQ post reverb. Let's kind of change this rhythm here a little bit. Maybe do a bit of a triplet. So I can just select a triplet part of the grid and insert this shape. Alright, so that's basically how to control reverb. Bounce it out, sidechain it, automate it, use parallel chains, EQ before and or after the reverb to shape the timbre of the reverb further than the reverb itself will allow you to do. Tweak the reverbs to be the right type of reverb for whatever purpose you're using. If you want the reverb to be more tonal, turn down the diffusion and the size and turn up the decay a little bit, find that sweet spot. If you want it to be more roomy and huge, turn up the size and the diffusion on whatever reverb you're using. And try it on drums. When it's sidechained on drums, you can see the transients are all nice and clean. On drums, if you want it to be affected less by the hats and snare and more by the kick, you can turn on this bandpass EQ and then just crank the Q, the gain on the sidechain input, and then bring this frequency down to like 600 hertz, and that'll then be affected much more by the kick than by the snare and the hi-hats, even less. So check that out. I'm going to go ahead and post EQ after this reverb. God damn. What's soloed? Okay, sorry, that was bugging me. All right, I'm gonna let's see what this looks like. So you can see that it adds a lot more dimensionality. It really adds so much life when you do this to all your main sounds and even your effects noises. It keeps the reverb from cluttering the mix, and see all these little gaps are now just full of very subtle reverb. Now if you keep it on the quiet point, or on the quiet end of things, then it'll really bring it out in the master, and if you leave your reverbs too loud, then when you master your track, the reverbs will all sound like they were louder than you put them in the mix. So let me do a quick master on this so you can see how much this reverb's about to come out and to the forefront. So you can see maybe on that snare, it's a bit too much reverb. Just right here for this section. Listen to how this is maybe a bit too much. Now part of that is because I think I need smoothness on my sidechain. I think I'm hearing a pop from my sidechain there. So I'm gonna just bring this LFO smoothness up and let's sample this again. It's a little too much still, so let's actually try getting rid of this kick. Okay, so let's go to our channel and let's turn that reverb, send this one down a bit. And I think there's like some lows in that reverb I don't like, so I'm gonna bring this up even more. Okay, that sounds a little bit better. Oh, you know what? It could be cool to have that snare tail cut off to leave the second snare dry. So let's see. We can automate the gain a little bit differently on this. I'm gonna make this a color that nothing else is, so that's easy to see. Let's put yellow. Or orange, excuse me. All right, so let's use this gain modulator. Let's get another one of these and put it after, so we can send audio in before and after. We can mute before in and after, I mean. So I think I'm hearing the conflict between these two snare tails, so let's mute it for there. Maybe even earlier. Maybe give it a little bit of sidechain like this. There's a little click right in here. So I'm gonna just duplicate what's, or let's just try to mute that. All right, that sounds a little bit better. It actually adds to the groove like that. So let's bring that over here. Let's bring this over here. Record it. Okay, now let's hear that through the master so we can really hear the volume of that reverb. Cool, nice little dubstep loop. Maybe I'll turn this into a track, but I'm not going to do it on stream because I have work to do. So, till next time, I'm Sephiroth. Thanks for watching. If you like my sounds, check me out on Patreon, sample pack once a month. I also offer lessons on there. And yeah, subscribe, comment, like, all that shit. Till next time, big up, big up, big up. Peace.